Welcome to the Trust Us, We're Professionals podcast with your friends from SSC CPAs and Advisors. This is the podcast where we break down financial matters found in pop culture and make complex financial matters more consumable for our listeners. We're doing a great service to the community. We're all licensed professionals, which means we basically took some tests and passed. I'm your host, Chris Underwood, a financial advisor with SSC Wealth, and I'm joined by Michelle Hammond and special guest Tim Metz, both who do business valuations for SSC. So, Timmy, Michelle, now is the time to brag a little bit about yourselves.
Brag, huh?
Brag.
I mean, just the fact that I do business valuation should speak for itself.
There's
right?
so few of us. Aren't there only like 6,000 though or something like that?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm very elite group. So the group is that I'm a part of, Certified Valuation Analysts. So that's the National Association of Certified Valuation Analysts. And that means that we've taken a test and that we meet some standards and we submit reports for reviews. So we're real. It's not like a fishing license that you can just buy online.
We apologize to all the fishermen out there that we just...
No, I like fishermen. But you get a license.
Yeah, Jesus was a fisherman. All right.
See? All right, there you go. Metz, save me.
I don't know that I can at this point. I think you've the boat is rocking. It's rocking hard. I'm Tim Metz, and I am also a CVA at SSC CPAs and Advisors, and I too have taken the test. I drink the Kool-Aid. I believe in business valuation. What more is there to know?
And you do it all day, every day.
I do all day and sometimes all night and all weekend.
And just to be clear, if you just joined us, we're talking about business valuations. In today's episode, our third or 103 or whatever, we're going to discuss all things Shark Tank, the business valuations on the show, how they come up with these crazy asks. Does this stuff happen in real life? And why? Why, oh why, was A-Rod ever on this show? I'm just kidding. A-Rod is very successful, and, he's kind of makes me uncomfortable, but you got to give him credit. He completely rehabbed his image after the PED scandal, so good for him. He admitted that he was wrong, and the public forgave him. So, the business valuations by the Sharks. Spot on or utter garbage?
I think it depends on the day, and I think it depends on whether they're selling garbage.
I don't know if they've done that yet, Tim.
Did they sell garbage? Well, never mind. I'm not going to walk into that one. I'm not going to walk into that
I'm
one.
sure they did.
Yeah.
At some point. I think it's an oversimplification of the process for entertainment value, but I think it's kind of how the math works. What do you say, Tim?
Yeah, I would agree. I think at the end of the day, when I've watched some of those episodes and I deploy my super special evaluator skills, I generally come up in the ballpark as to what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Does it seem like they're rushing the valuations just because obviously it's a TV show and they have to get to it quickly?
I think you got to think about the process of what we actually see versus what happens. I've been to a couple conferences where Mr. Wonderful or Damon spoke, and they were talking about how it's really like an hour and a half that those people are in the tank, and that we watch it in 10, 15 minutes. And that there's a whole pitch book involved. I don't want to use jargon or anything, but they give them a whole set of their financial statements, where they're headed, what their projections are, why they're special, their market segments, and all of those things. So I think that there's the real stuff happening behind the scenes, and then it's kind of condensed and sensationalized with some heartwarming stories.
That's right. They've got to make it TV friendly.
Yeah, no one wants to watch, an hour and a half of going through financials, right?
That's right. I mean, if somebody saw me grinding at my desk for 8 hours on a valuation, they'd be asleep in about 30 minutes. So
that's
you've
what
got
I
to
do
add some theatrical.
That's what I do at lunchtime when I take my, siesta.
Exactly.
All right. I do have, you watch this show though, and, I give all the contestants guts because it's not easy to go into a room like that and pitch these highly successful people. But how do they think this idea, some of these ideas are, some of them are great. Many of them are not. How do they ever think something like this is worth whatever, 20 million, 10 million, 30 million, whatever it may be?
It always makes me laugh. It kind of reminds me of those House Hunter episodes where they're taking the couple out and they're like, okay, we're looking for a $3.5 million house on the coast. Like, what do you do? And she's like, I'm a dog catcher.
I flip hamburgers.
almost snotted into the microphone.
I'm a dog catcher, and my wife enjoys her time on the beach. And you're like, a $3.5 million house. Where the hell did you come up? Okay, whatever. Same with these valuations. Like I kind of think of whenever somebody walks into the Shark Tank and says, okay, I want $50 million for a 5% stake in my company. And everybody's like, oh, cool. What a great idea. And then we're going along and then they say, okay, how much revenue have you done? And they're like, $25,000.
Or they haven't done any. I like that one too.
I'm what you call pre-revenue. That's what you call that. It doesn't mean I am never going to make money. I'm just before the point of making money, pre-money.
Yeah, it's kind of like thinking you're going to win the lottery.
Well, they have a system.
Yes.
I mean,
they've got something in place.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, so the dog walker is foolish. But who decides, all kidding aside, who decides the offer price? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, the entrepreneur does in the situation on the Shark Tank, right?
Okay, can you give me an idea of like how that quick math works? I'm a financial advisor. I don't do business valuation. You're much more learned than me. So if you guys could just break it down, talk to me as if I was a child.
Well, sometimes I don't think it's totally clear how the math works for some of these folks, in light of the concept of whatever they're bringing to the table. But, it really kind of comes down to you've got a pie. The pie is your company or it's your proposed company. And if that pie is worth $1 million and you want to sell off an eighth of it, you're going to do the math and that's going to be their ask up front. There's no real rocket science to that.
No, the rocket science comes in valuing that whole pie, especially when somebody's pre-revenue. So, that's the nice thing. Haven't made money yet. So really the determination of value is kind of based upon what the cash flows are going to be kicked off, from this business over time, right? So if they don't have any historical revenues and cash flows and those things, what they're doing is they're looking at the market, they're projecting what they're going to be able to make in revenue, cost of goods sold, and overhead. And they're doing that way out into the future. And they're saying in 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, we're going to be making this much money. So pay me today for what I'm going to be making in the future. So you get to go on this ride with us. So that's one of the harder parts, I think, about valuation when people are watching it on Shark Tank, is that they're hearing that these businesses are only doing a couple $100,000 worth of revenue or $1 million worth of revenue. And then those business owners pivot and they look at their business and they're like, okay, well, why don't my business would be worth, if he's worth 10 million and not doing anything, I should be worth 20 million because I do a whole bunch, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other concepts that really go into determining the value of an already operating company versus a pre-revenue company.
Yeah. And I mean, what projection have you ever seen come from a business that wasn't going to make loads of money? So, you always have to take that pre-revenue scenario and you have to kind of look at it and say, really? I mean, does this make any sense? And so it's so hard to value pre-revenue companies. It's next to impossible to really hone that down, especially if it involves lots of intellectual property and intangible assets, things we call intangible assets because you can't hold them, right? So
how does that change the valuation?
Well, it usually involves a whole lot of smarter people than myself, quite frankly, who are valuing those intangible assets. Oftentimes you'll see on Shark Tank and other shows, you'll see, the whole basis of their value is the underlying patent that supports the product that they want to sell. So you get into some fairly complex financial modeling and all that sort of stuff, probably more than we want to go into here. But when you start involving intangible assets, you start muddying the waters considerably. And that's why pre-revenue companies based upon intellectual property, it feels more like guesswork than it does science.
And I think that's why you see sharks kind of stay in their lane, stay in their industry, because all of that value determination is based upon the volume and the revenue that you think that company is really going to be able to do. And so to really understand a market and to be able to look out in the future and to determine that value, you really have to know it. You kind of have to live it every day.
No, I mean, that's tremendously helpful. Makes sense. I feel much more learned. Thank you, Tim and Michelle. Let's talk about business valuations though, but not Shark Tank. Let's just get to the real world and small business owner and, John and Jan Smith. What do you think they need to know about business evaluations?
That's a loaded question, but I think when small business owner comes to me and they want to talk about valuation, I always start off with my curmudgeonly adage that it's only worth what somebody's going to pay for it. And so what we try to do is set expectations as to what that looks like. And, we have a variety of methods that we use to value a business and approaches that we use. But I think, when we first start, we have to set some expectations. An owner often clearly has an idea of what they think their business is worth. And so, in that process, we kind of figure out, are they in the same world that we're in right now? I mean, a lot of times business valuation is actually working with somebody to get them to really understand the true value of their business, not what all their blood, sweat, and tears makes them feel, right? So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that's always the first step.
Yeah, so that's like the proud homeowner who thinks their house is worth $1 million when it's worth half that type of thing. So trying to kind of talk them off the ledge a little bit.
Right.
And I think it's really important to have the discussion about what's my business worth early on in the life cycle of a business, because what we can help you do by talking about valuation and looking to see what your business is worth is saying, okay, what are your key value drivers? So you're not just going to work at the end of every day for a paycheck. You're working on improving the key value drivers in your business to make it worth the most at your exit. So I think that there's knowing the number, and then there's working it to getting it to the number that you want it to be.
I think that's a really good point, because business valuations theoretically should be done, continually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, annually, every 2 or 3 years, we tend to look at business valuations as just something you do. Oh, I'm going to sell my business. I'm going to go get a value on it, and I'm going to sell it for that. But really,
Tim's trying to skip right now in the studio.
I am.
I'm going to go get a valuation.
I'm going to fill my basket with valuations today. But, valuations are so important for business planning purposes. And I think the industry has been undersold for a long time regarding the strategic importance of valuations. And just like Michelle said, the best time to get a valuation is really a few years after you've started truly recognizing revenue and you're ready to go, but long before you want to retire, because what we do when we value is we identify risks. We look at the business, we figure out what its weak points are and what its strengths are. And then we can use that as the tool with the business owner on how to set their strategic plan going forward. And then we can come back to that periodically every 2 or 3 years. And this is what I love about business valuations is they bring accountability. They bring lots of accountability, because once you've identified key performance indicators and you know the hot spots and the buttons that people need to punch to make their business really successful, it's hard to not own that as an owner.
Through that process, we're required to compare your company and your results to industry, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this is, small business owners love this, right? Like, how do you ever gauge how you're doing compared to your peers, right? And everybody wants to be doing better than the other electrical company, the other construction company, the other ice cream shop. Like, you want to know that you're doing better than them, that you have your operations in place, because somebody who's doing better than the industry commands a higher price, commands a much higher value than somebody who's kind of, that's why on Shark Tank, so what's your gross profit? What's your take home? What's your net? Mm-hmm. Revenue matters. Revenue is cool, right? We've talked about how important that is, but it doesn't matter what you make. It matters what you keep. And so that's why you kind of hear them get to the end of this and they're like, what was your take home last year? And they're like $30,000. And then
No, I just love that. I just love that. You got real meek all of a sudden.
Yeah. $30,000. And then they're like, well, how much did you pay yourself? Clearly if you're only 30 net, you must have taken home 150. And they're like, no, I didn't pay myself. I had to put 30,000 into the business. So they're like, oh, you had to put more money. That's not sustainable, and that's what they're trying to gauge. Mm-hmm. And when you see people kind of like the sharks kind of back off a deal because the net isn't there.
It's painting a picture and of kind of the truth about the business, which is kind of like a business valuation the numbers don't lie.
They guide you for sure. I mean, they don't. I mean, we can do all sorts of things with numbers, but at the end of the day,
What sorts of things are you doing with numbers, Tim?
Well, we do all sorts of things. I can't disclose that. That's our trade secret.
That's what I was going to say. Numbers don't lie, but people do.
People lie all the time.
And they'll be like, oh, that is not for my kids' college fund that I'm running through marketing. You know what I mean? Like, that's not my personal RV. That's for the business. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of subjectivity, right? In a business
valuation. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
We cut through all that subjectivity. And sometimes, like a surgeon, painfully so, because you don't get anesthesia when you're doing a valuation with us. It's straight to
God.
That's
you're selling us.
Yeah, you should say you work for a different firm on that one, Chris.
Come have surgery.
Tim Metz from PricewaterhouseCoopers.
We'll remove your wisdom teeth. No pain meds.
It'll be fine.
There's a lot of words involved. Like, we say that there's numbers, but it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of planning, and it's a lot of understanding your business and why you're special and what makes you more valuable than the guy down the street.
Cool. Well done. All right. Well, since I have you both here, and you're both experts, and I am not, let's talk about, or at least not about this, let's talk about some other aspects of, business on Shark Tank, the royalty deal, okay? Mixed with ownership. That's what Mr. Wonderful always wants. Can you guys elaborate on this a little bit?
Of course he does.
Do you hate him? It looks like you hate him.
No. You know what?
I picture a dartboard with his face in your house, and you're just...
I'm jealous. I mean, he's got this down, man. A royalty deal, that's not something I know if I would accept. You want to explain it, Tim?
Yeah, well, it's a proverbial, have your cake and eat it too kind of situation, because, you give somebody a little bit of money, or, it's all relative, but you give them some money to buy a part of their business and into perpetuity. And notice how I said that so I didn't pop into the microphone. Very good there.
Well done.
But you
PJ just gave you a thumbs up. Good job.
You give this, you're giving somebody a revenue stream into perpetuity. And so what they've essentially done is they've invested in your business. They've given you some money up front, and they're just going to benefit from that indefinitely. Not only because of their ownership stake, so they're going to get their share of the ownership profits, but every sale you make, an additional part of that goes into their pocket. I'm a recovering lawyer, and in the law world, we talk about things like usury. And usury is a bad word. Usury means I'm charging you too much for this loan. And
you held up your fingers like quotations. Like
usury isn't a quote; it's a real word.
It's a real word. It's real.
Sounds like you made it up, but it's real.
It sounds a lot like being used.
It's not the werewolf or the vampire. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing, and it's a perpetual thing. And so, really, what you're doing is you're just giving someone a lifetime membership in your revenue stream for perhaps not what they really contributed in the first place.
Yeah, I think I was watching one where he said, okay, I'll give you $200,000 for 10% equity, and I want to add $1 royalty on every unit until you've paid me back $500,000. And he still gets to keep his 10% equity in the business. So you just essentially took a loan on for $200,000, gave away equity, and your interest rate is $300,000 over whatever period it takes you to pay him back on the number of units you did.
It just seems like a way to take advantage of people that are desperate.
It's not though. It's providing creative financing, and that could match somebody. Like if they don't feel like, if he's going to take a little bit lesser of equity because they believe in their business and that they believe that the overall value will grow. And he's going to only take 10% when they were willing to give 20%. And they're betting on the win. They're betting on the final exit that with their remaining 90% is going to be worth a hell of a lot more than that $300,000 that they had to pay back extra in the royalties. So it's really your right or your left pocket and what you're betting on in your business, and how you plan to succeed and exit at the end. So it's an interesting way to take a deal.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've talked about this before, when you're doing business deals and you're doing acquisitions, you're growing businesses, there's 10 different ways to skin that cat to get there. And so the thing that royalties bring, and while I'm not a personal fan of royalties have a big place in business in the United States. I mean, every franchise that you see is based upon a royalty stream to some franchisor. And so, it's something that we know, we understand it. And, when you're in a situation like the Shark Tank and you're trying to go back and forth, sometimes it's a way to leverage a deal to get it done that you might not have been able to get done any other way. And so while I don't necessarily like it, it is very necessary to the successful growth of a lot of businesses.
Well, what it does is it allows the financing conditions to match cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
You don't owe the royalty till you sell the thing. He's taking a huge risk that you don't pay him $1 back, right? And so I think that what a royalty does is it allows the business owner to kind of not like lock into some long-term bank deal where they've agreed to pay $6,000 a month for the next 72 months, regardless of whether they sell a damn thing or not.
That's
so,
right.
It's a cash flow mechanism like so many things in life that, you have to look at your overall business and see how it fits togetger.
Speaking of that, Lori, one of the sharks, often, I love how we're saying Damon, Lori, like they're our friends.
They're buddies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They were over last night for dinner.
Did you make a cassoulet?
I did.
Oh my God. Did
Mr.
you really?
Wonderful didn't like it.
So Lori, Judge Lori, Shark Tank Lori, Shark Lori, often seems to be using a line of credit. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah. Financing. It's so important, right? Like, in order to be able to buy the inventory to resell through to the clients, they need to prepay for that inventory. And they need the funding to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. So Lori's turning around and saying, okay, guys, if you have a purchase order, if you need to go buy that inventory, I'll front you the money so that you can buy the inventory because I believe that you'll sell it through to your channels. And sometimes that kind of funding, Tim, is at a bank.
Impossible
to get.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in pre-revenue businesses where you have no, banks, they always think about what's the worst case scenario, what can happen here, what can go wrong. And they always take the presence of positive cash flow as an indication that things are going to be good going forward. But when you don't have that, it's a big guess. And so she serves a very important function there. She's a private bank, but not constrained by all the rules that other banks have to follow. And so she gets compensated for that because we know that risk is commensurate with reward. But at the end of the day, she's serving a really important function.
All right, well, let's talk about behind the scenes a little bit of Shark Tank and how that compares to what's real life. So we talked about this a little bit earlier in the podcast, in Le Podcast. They hear 6 to 8 pitches a day. It's nonstop. It's not the 10-minute thing you see on TV like we talked about. It's like, it's like an hour and a half. There's a pitch book. This is interesting. I found this out. It's actually a handshake deal, and there's a lot of due diligence that goes on after for months sometimes, and that most deals don't get done.
Mr. Wonderful told us that at a conference that it was 20%. 20% of all the deals actually get done. And I hate to say this to my recovering lawyer friend, but as soon as you bring in the attorneys, man.
Oh, we're going to tear it up. Yeah. We're going to ruin it.
Well, they have to justify an hourly rate. So.
Well, right. And you have to lob a grenade on everything, right? Yeah. But yeah, I've always wondered what the success rate is because I know in real life, that's probably not even far off.
It's not, babe. I bet I'm going to only speak of my personal knowledge of our clients that go into due diligence. I would say a 1 in 3 chance of closing. Mm-hmm. And then, and you meet beforehand, you negotiate the purchase price. You don't let your possible acquirer come in, lift your skirt and see all your stuff. I shouldn't say that.
I mean, no, it paints a picture.
It does paint a picture, but one that PJ is going to edit out for me, please.
Or not. Or
Come
not. Or not.
Financial junk's important.
Financial junk. But like you make the deal before you start showing all of your trade secrets, all of your planning, all of your customer list, all of things, because you have to know if you guys are on the same page way before you start sharing that kind of information.
That's right.
And so it makes sense. It makes sense.
And, we chalk a lot of this up to financial stuff, and to the due diligence. But, it also kind of belies a bigger issue. And that is, if you're going to have an investor, you're going to sell your business. There are soft components to that too, that sometimes get borne out in the valuation process. But if you're not a cultural fit, if you're not an intellectual fit, you have to be careful who you're going to do business with, even if you're a 10% investor in a business. And so, I could very easily see some of these deals going along through the diligence phase, and then that kind of personality conflict starts to develop. And in my banking career, I often saw that be the grand deal killer. The people just couldn't get along at some point in time, and they backed out. And so, we talk about business valuation like it's hard and fast, but there's also a soft element that goes into that, because any business valuation we do involves a lot of consulting. It involves a lot of discussion about, well, how do your cultures fit? Now, we're not the arbiters of that, but we always want to bring it, because that's a risk factor. That's something we're here to evaluate risk. And when two companies try to come together and they're diametrically opposed to one another, somebody in the room has to say, yo, are you guys looking at this?
Have you ever said yo in a business meeting in your life?
Absolutely. I've been there.
Many times.
Yo, guys, this is nuts. I've heard him say that. But I think it's that it is. You call them a 10% investor, but at the end of the day, they're your partner. And similar to a marriage, they're easy to get in and really hard to get out of. I don't see a lot of post-nup hour Vegas wedding chapels, right? Because it's really hard to break up a business, to have partners removed, to do those things. It is absolutely devastating and very hard to go through. So you want to do that due diligence. You want to get that prenup, so that you can operate your business knowing that if something happens, and it doesn't have to be a catastrophic fight or event. I mean, partners pass away, partners get disabled,
divorced.
Yeah. I mean, do you want your partner's wife to be your new partner? Cool. So there's a whole bunch of considerations that through the due diligence process, those things kind of bubble up pretty quick.
Let's do a game. You guys up for a game?
Always.
Okay, so we're going to do a trivia game here.
Trivia. Okay.
This is a deal or no deal type of game, but that's copyrighted. So we'll call this...
Deal or maybe deal?
Even better than what I came up with. We'll call this deal or maybe deal?
Just do it or just don't.
I'm pretty sure that's almost copyrighted.
Okay, so I'm going to present a scenario to you with a product that's maybe real, maybe it's not. And you're going to, speak to the valuation. And if you think it's on point, and tell me whether or not they think they got a deal or a maybe deal. All right, you ready?
Okay.
So these are things that really happened on Shark Tank.
You have to. That's part. Listen to the rules.
I don't know. You went on for so long, I got lost.
Okay, it's very simple. Let me get out my abacus. So you're going to tell me about the business valuation, if you think it's on point, and then whether or not they got a deal or a maybe deal, or no deal.
God, I'm gonna have to do math in my head.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do math in your head?
Generally not.
Not accurately.
I have too many voices in there.
Do they all get along usually, or are they usually fighting?
Pick your day of the week.
Yeah. Is it kind of like a Jorge ride?
It's been known to be that way. It's bouncy down the road. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Some good taters. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here we go. So the product is a single serve wine in a disposable wine glass. The maybe real or maybe not real entrepreneur asked for $300,000 for 5%, and his revenue was $5 million at this point. Is that a spot-on valuation? And do you think that was real or that was
I know that's a real product. Who thought, oh, let's ask Michelle if she knows anything about drinking wine.
Yeah, Cohart put this together.
Yeah.
And I was like, of course.
It's called the Coppola. They're little, and you can get a little.
Copa di Vino.
Thank
Copa
you.
di Vino, yes.
Thank you.
That's right.
And you can get, and they're really cute. Yeah, absolutely. They got a deal, and I bought one. Great for tailgating.
They did not get a deal.
Damn.
I'll go into that in a second. But Timmy,
Well,
valuation on point. $5 million revenue, asked for $300,000.
well, that's
for
a
5%.
$6 million revenue. And I mean, that's a $6 million valuation if I'm mentally calculating correctly. And the thing I hate about these is $5 million. Is that $5 million in bottom line? I don't know. I mean, if that's $5 million in top line, that seems kind of rich. But, as a concept, I love it, except it's only one glass.
It's very not like environmentally friendly.
Right.
Tim, we
right.
can get you a wine helmet so you can have one
Yeah,
on each
I mean, I
side.
need like those wine holsters, like the 6-shooters. But, it's an interesting idea. I've seen them now.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen this, but I've heard about them, and I've seen them at the liquor store. It's a great idea. In the beverage industry, that's probably not a rich valuation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is actually maybe arguably the most famous contestant in Shark Tank history. James Martin, the entrepreneur's name was, and he was very arrogant and very sweaty. And watch it. I mean, he was sweating profusely the whole time. But to your point earlier, they're in there for like an hour and 45 minutes pitching to these, really successful business people.
But he was arrogant, and we just said
There
personality
you go.
kills
I'm just going to
deals.
say ding, 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 ding.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much money they make or how many of those I'll drink.
All the sharks loved the product and basically hated him.
Yeah.
And they actually went on the second time just as arrogant, probably more. And so they all passed, even though they all thought it was a great idea. And Cuban actually said, and I quote, "Could you imagine dealing with him on an ongoing basis?"
Bingo. I mean, exactly. And, kind of another little adage is that, it doesn't matter how good your idea is. Sometimes the time isn't right. And sometimes it's because you're not right, because you can't get along and play nicely with other people. And this sounds exactly like that. This guy, I mean, if he's going to creep out billionaires who are used to dealing with obnoxious people, I mean, he could be almost, he could come from the underworld.
I have to go back and watch that one.
The takeaway from this is the inventor of Copa di Vino is from the underworld. Moving on. Okay, let's continue the game of deal or maybe deal. Okay, so this product that may or may not be real is a cat toilet training kit. Okay, this sounds like American ingenuity at its best, and I mean that endearingly. The ask was $100,000 for 15%, and the revenue was $1.4 million. Did they get a deal, and is that a proper valuation?
That's an interesting product, because so training cats to use the toilet.
Yes, it's much more civilized.
That's probably a reasonable valuation. I think depending on the price point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a dog person, but I mean, people love cats. I could see
People are weird with cats.
People are weird. They want them, like
Tiger King.
Tiger King.
It would be awesome though in cities, where like you're in a little small apartment in New York and you don't want to smell the cat's business all day long.
So I'm saying deal, and that's at 1.5 million. Is that what you said the valuation was?
1.4. The ask was for $100,000 for 15%.
So okay, so did I do that right?
100,000 for 15%.
1.5. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah, I agree.
They get $100,000 for 20%, but yes, they got a deal. And this woman, her name was Rebecca Riscate. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Got a deal with Kevin Harrington, who kind of looks like Vince from ShamWow. Do you remember him? The ShamWow guy?
Yes. Hi, I'm Vince. I'm Vince from ShamWow.
I don't think he was Don Corleone, but
He was close. He had lots of chest hair.
no, actually, Vince from ShamWow was more like Beavis. He was more like, I can't do this all day.
Oh my God, you guys are gonna do
Anyhow,
impressions.
I digress.
You put a mic in front of these two.
So, the inventor, Rebecca Rescate, it's a 5-week training program and a set of cat toilet training inserts, and allows people to train their cats to do their business on the toilet. And actually, her cat ended up playing Jinxie in the movie Little Fockers.
Oh.
Fockers, not moving on with the game. Deal or maybe deal. All right, actually, Tim, this is a good one for you because you can play the guitar. The product is a guitar chord learning system and tools. And the revenue is $150,000, and they asked for $125,000 for 10%.
How much was it again? How much did they ask for?
$125,000 for 10%. Current revenue of $150,000.
It's probably a little rich, but I think I know this product because I think I've seen it. And it's interesting. Like 90% of the people who try to learn to play guitar quit after the first year. And so I suppose if it makes it work past that, if not, they've already gotten their pay for it, and everybody thinks they can learn to play the guitar sooner or later. So, I could see, that's just one of those things that's just made for Amazon right there. I'd say they got a deal. And even though that valuation's rich, I'll bet they got it.
I think that valuation's kind of crazy. I think that's too rich. I'm going to say no deal.
They got a deal. $175,000 for 20%.
They cut in.
There you go.
Almost out.
And the shark was, I don't know how to say his name. I like him though. He seems like a nice guy. Robert Herzvak.
Oh yeah, I like Robert.
Is that how you say that?
Yeah, he's my favorite.
I didn't want to be like Robert Herzvak.
He's like the normal one.
I don't know why I keep going high today. But yeah, actually, it's called guitar. It's called Chord Buddy, and they got offers from all the sharks, I believe, and it subsequently has been featured in Forbes, MSNBC, HSN, and obviously Shark Tank. And I should mention the previous one, the cat one, was called City Kitty. I didn't say that before.
Oh, that's cute.
It is, and it's city like the city,
Not like city.
Well, actually, it's like Citibank, but yes, city, not like sitting. Yes, it's a play on words. It's very, very clever. But yeah, if we're gonna be talking about our product, the least we can do is give her some free publicity. So okay,
For the 4 people listening right
yes,
now.
for
my mom.
Yeah, my mom, Tim's mom, and PJ.
And PJ.
So, all right, final one. This is an algorithmic real estate investing website / app. The app does many things. It calculates mortgage payments, cap rate, and cash flow while comparing the variables for nearby properties. It's a tool for real estate buyers and real estate investors. The basic app is free, but there is a premium membership option that allows for more detailed customization for individual properties and investment circumstances. Pre-revenue, like we talked about.
Pre-revenue.
Yeah.
And the survey says...
And they asked for $350,000 for 10%. So you're saying the valuation is $3.5 million?
Yeah, you did it, baby.
That's darn good. Simple Jack gets it.
I don't see them buying a lot of apps on that show. You know what I mean? I don't see them investing in those things when we watch it. It seems like they're very more product or even service based, that they might have like an app component to it for an add-on, but not just the app. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I agree. I think for any app that you finance, somebody's going to come along and do one that's 6 months later that's even better, and so, and when you look at what this thing does, I mean, there's already a million sources for all that information anyway. I have a hard time with the business thesis just to begin with, but pre-revenue, that kind of money, I mean, sounds like a typical Silicon Valley deal, but I would say no.
Yeah, they didn't get a deal. Revestor is the name of the company, and I actually tried to do some research to see if they're ended up, getting a deal through another, venture capital firm or something like that. I couldn't figure anything out, so my guess is, maybe they're not. No deal.
So what's happening on Shark Tank? Like, that's real, right? Like, people take their products, they walk it around to different places and ask for investors. There's venture capital groups all over the world and the United States, right? So I think that knowing that is out there as a possible source of funding, an alternative source of funding as opposed to a traditional bank. And I'd love sometime to have our client and my friend Rachel Qualls on. She started Venture 360. She's in Kansas City, and she works with venture capital groups all over the world, helping them with their accounting and investor tracking and cap tables and tax returns and all that good stuff. So she could really tell us a lot about venture capital. Maybe next time.
I think that's a great idea. I'm just wondering why we didn't have her on and we had Tim instead. That's it for today's episode of the Trust Us, We're Professionals podcast, brought to you by all of us at SSC CPAs and Advisors. If you ever have any financial questions, needs, questions, concerns, if you want to talk to Tim about Cassoles, be prepared to set aside an afternoon. But you can always reach out to us through our website at www.ssccpas.com. One more time, that's www.ssccpas.com. Michelle,
Timmer,
thank you for your time. Any words of wisdom before you head out?
not a one. You've taken them all from me.
Left it all on the table. Thanks, Underwood.
Thanks.
This podcast was recorded and is being made available by SSC Solutions, Inc., together with its affiliates and its employees, SSC, solely for informational purposes. SSC is not providing or undertaking to provide any financial, economic, legal, accounting, tax, or any other advice in or by virtue of this podcast. The information, statements, comments, views, and opinions provided in this podcast are general in nature, and such information, statements, comments, views, and opinions in the receipt of this podcast by any listener are not intended to be and should not be construed as the provision of investment advice by SSC, that listener, or generally, and do not result in any listener being considered a client or customer of SSC. The information, statements, comments, views, and opinions expressed in this podcast do not constitute and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment course of action. The information, statements, comments, views, and opinions expressed or provided in this podcast, including by speakers who are not officers, employees, or agents of SSC, are not necessarily those of SSC and may not be current. SSC does not make any representation or warranty as to the accuracy or completeness of any of the information, statements, comments, views, or opinions contained in this podcast. Any liability thereof, including in respect of direct, indirect, or consequential loss or damage of any kind whatsoever, is expressly disclaimed. SSC does not undertake any obligation whatsoever to provide any form of update, amendment, change, or correction to any of this information, statements, comments, views, or opinions set forth in this podcast. No part of this podcast may, without SSC Solutions Inc.'s prior written consent, be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in any form by any means.